Hey guys, I'm founder and CEO of e621.net and welcome to my top 10 Goatsy edits showcase. FNaF 4 is easily my favorite FNaF game. I know I put it in B tier in my tier list video, but I think I was just way too harsh on it. So many people seem to despise this game. Of course it's not perfect, but in my opinion it's the most undeservingly hated game in all of FNaF. And don't bring up Security Breach because it deserves 100% of the hate it got. It's really unfortunate because for the reasons I'm about to talk about, it's an incredible game. From the opening of the game and the teasers, if you played it on release, you can tell that Scott poured his full effort into making this game absolutely fucking terrifying. From the music to the occasional sound effects, hearing a dog barking or the wind blowing outside, it's incredibly immersive. It gives you the horrible, helpless feeling of being a child having these nightmares. The graphics aren't perfect, but they're definitely pretty good, especially for a game with only one developer, which builds to the immersion. And the lack of an idea as to the true story of the game and what's going on sort of plays into that, assuming that you play it on release and don't know what's happening. Speaking of, now, I'm gonna get this out of the way right here, right now. I don't really like FNaF 4's story. It's not that it's bad, it's just that FNaF set itself to a bit of a higher standard with how well FNaF 3 was supposed to wrap up the story. FNaF 1 and FNaF 2 set up the main characters of the four main animatronics, the character of William Afton, or the purple guy, and the puppet. FNaF 3's contribution at its core was that it added William Afton's character by the beautiful twist of him being chased down by the souls of the children he murdered and forced to rot in the same suits he used to trap them. And it contributed an end to the classic characters we all know and the souls that haunted them. Obviously there was more, but being completely honest, it's not that interesting. But had you played FNaF 4 when it came out, the story didn't really fit in anywhere. On top of most of the symbolism being vague at best, for example the box, which is the worst piece of shit Easter egg for getting that far in the game. And the Bite of 83 was only the Bite of 83 because of a completely unrelated date on a TV. And I don't know how Scott expected us to put that together. Scott wanted the story to be extremely hard to put together, but we had no way to know the crying child's relationship with the purple guy. We had no way to know any of this was relevant to the first three games at all. Not to mention that it brought in Dream Theory, which although I believe was very much intentional, it's also terrible and the contents of the box, I guess. Also, to anyone thinking that it doesn't matter if the story fit in because it was the end yet, it was supposed to be, just like FNaF 3, but I assume Scott was unsatisfied with the way the story ended, and it all just being a dream, so he scrapped the whole dream story and went in a whole new direction with the franchise. And honestly, that was an incredibly, extremely great, very super, really good, correct, perfect decision. It was rather poggers, as the kids would say. It also gave us Pizza Sim, which I love. Scott has said usually to model the characters for each FNaF game, it takes him about a week and a half to do all of them, whereas it took him upwards of 2 weeks for every model in FNaF 4. The amount of detail in each of the models is insane, and I'm genuinely surprised that in one game, he went from Watermelon Freddy to this. Not to understate Springtrap's design, but I will gladly understate the Phantom designs. They suck. I see a surprising amount of people who say FNaF 4 went way too extreme, trying to make the models as scary and torn up as possible, and it detracted from the realism. But I don't think they realize that the animatronics aren't real. I mean, I guess nothing in FNaF is, but they're not real in the video game world either. But anyway, that's one of my personal highlights of FNaF 3 as well. Scott wasn't bound by making a realistic location for FNaF 3 because it was a horror establishment in-universe. For FNaF 4, he wasn't bound by making realistic animatronics because they weren't real. Nightmare is probably my favorite FNaF animatronic of all time. The only aspect I really dislike is that his jump scare sound is inherently not even startling, let alone scary. Even though at his core he is just a Fredberry color, the design details of a somewhat transparent body showing his brain and the concept of a character that represents death being this twisted character that's completely black, as though the creator of this game was an atheist. Albeit some of the models do look a little bit goofy. Like, I don't know what Scott was thinking when he made one of Chica's jump scares the cupcake. Like, the cupcake model is fine when it's not the focus, but it's not a good jump scare when it's grabbing all of your attention. The gameplay of FNaF 4, while maybe not as chaotic as FNaF 2, is still super enjoyable in my experience. There's 4 basic things you need to do in the gameplay loop, in no particular order. Check the left and right doors for Bonnie and Chica, check the closet door for Foxy, and check your bed for Freddles. But the fact that good gameplay will still keep Foxy out early on in each night is one of my favorite aspects of FNaF 4. It rewards you for consistently sticking to the gameplay loop. If you miss Foxy going into the closet, or if he just messes up your gameplay loop enough, you could easily die to him. This simple gameplay loop is fun, but the fact that at the end of the game it swaps all of the animatronics for Nightmare Fredbear, who has completely different mechanics, revitalizes the feeling of helplessness I talked about right at the start of the video. You're listening for Fredbear's laughs, not just following that normal loop, and it's terrifying not knowing if you've just made a mistake and if you're going to get jumped for it. The same thing exists with Nightmare. He interrupts your gameplay loop. The thing is, Nightmare isn't in the base game that most people end up playing, and Fredbear appears in the middle of Night 5. From what I've seen, the Halloween update has that same feeling, and I'm probably never going to play it because it seems way too confusing. FNaF 4 is also the only game that has separate minigames that affect the main game. That minigame being Fun with Plush Trap, which if you can win will give you an extra 2-hour head start at the start of your night. Meaning, even if you're struggling with a night, good gameplay could tip it your way anyway. It can be done where just flashing your light at specific times will give you a guaranteed win, but it's not overpowered because you can't just retry it till you pass another night. I think FNaF 3 had quite a massive influence on just how horrifying FNaF 4 was. FNaF 3's lackluster horror aspects are what I believe drove Scott to make the scariest game he could. The same applies to the rest of the game for the most part, but I especially noticed it with the horror aspects. FNaF 4 also has, in my opinion, the best jumpscare setup in any FNaF game, and it's pretty reusable. You check your door, you listen for breathing, and if there is breathing, you close the door. If there's no breathing and you close it, you'll probably get jump scared. And obviously, if you don't check the doors, you get jump scared anyway. What makes this mechanic so good is that if you slip up and miss breathing, you're already listening very closely, so that jump scare catches you at your most vulnerable point. But what I think makes FNaF 4 so terrifying is just how well done the jump scares themselves are. With the jump scare setup I mentioned, as well as them having, in my opinion, the most immediately shocking jump scare sound. It's deep, it has that immediate head-shaking feeling, which is shared by FNaF 3's jump scare sound to a lesser extent. But FNaF 3's jump scares suck. Not to mention, I believe FNaF 4 has by far some of the best jump scare animations in the franchise. The way all of these jump scares are able to get me time and time again is something I don't think a single other game has replicated to the same extent, except the fucking cupcake. All in all, despite the polarizing opinions on FNaF 4, I hope I've accurately explained myself to the hates the game poll, and the loves the game poll isn't the hates the me poll. FNaF 4, from start to finish, in my opinion, is the closest we will ever get to a perfect FNaF game. If you compare it to, for example, FNaF 2, I personally prefer the gameplay of FNaF 2 and the story, but I think the horror, immersion, and designs of FNaF 4 absolutely outweigh that. With, say, FNaF 1, I prefer the atmosphere, but basically everything else, in my opinion, falls short of FNaF 4. You can click off the video now if you're just interested in the FNaF stuff. I'm going to talk about video stuff and make like one joke, maybe two. I already announced this in my Discord, link in the description by the way, go join, but I'm pretty much entirely going to be phasing out Let's Play content, mainly replaced by the 100-day style format from time to time, and pretty much always these kinds of videos. I will probably do them for special occasions, like revisiting a game on its anniversary, wink wink, and then that will probably be it for Let's Plays. I may continue doing them a little bit more often on my second channel, but here they're near enough done. If you really want an explanation, I just don't enjoy making Let's Plays. They're not creatively fulfilling, they're not fun to edit, they're not something I can look at and be proud of. So many people just make boring, shitty Let's Plays, and that's not a creator who I want to be. Anyway, I've been founder and CEO of E61. Wait, you actually thought I was going to make another completely contrary joke to the intro? You really are stupid, aren't you? Anyway, you're right. I've been renowned World War II war hero Johnny Sins, and have a good microsecond.